What's going on, guys? Good evening and welcome to your favorite soccer podcast on the internet. I know we're small, but we always try to go big. It is Stateside Footy. And of course, on this Sunday night, there was breaking news today, so I figured, why not? Let's go live. So I figured, call the guy that knows exactly what's going on when it comes to the Seattle Sounders. Of course, I like to think I know what's going on with the Seattle Sounders too, but for the sake of this conversation, I reached out to Jeff Lageson of Prost International, who is a friend of the show, and he was willing to come on short time to in a short amount of time to discuss this one. So good evening, Jeff. How are you doing tonight, bud?
I'm doing good. This is an interesting move. When you pinged me about it earlier, and it was like, we need to talk about this soon. I'm like, this is the sort of thing that we just need to need to turn on the cameras and talk this out, because there's a lot of it. There's a lot to unbox here that's good and bad. And I think that when we've chatted before here, there's a lot to unbox, but I'm doing pretty good. You know, recently met my granddaughter, and you know,
nice.
So
congratulations.
Life is good. Life is good. So
well, congratulations
I'm
are in order.
Yep.
Yeah, congratulations in order for your family. That is certainly absolutely fantastic news. And I can't wait until that day happens where, I get to meet my grandchild for the first time. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But then again, I can't hold a gun to my kid's head and, procreate. No, that doesn't work that way. But before we get into the discussion, please do me a favor and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell. And help the channel out. All right, so news dropped this afternoon that the Seattle Sounders, our beloved Seattle Sounders, finally ended their streak of summer transfer windows without an incoming, as news dropped from Fabrizio Romano that Dejan Joveljic, who is the Serbian assassin, is now on his way to Seattle for his medicals for a fee around $6 million, and that means he will be Seattle's new DP striker. And I think on the surface, I think Sounders fans are going to be happy because he's not a bad player. As a matter of fact, he won the MLS Cup a couple years ago while being a member of the LA Galaxy on that incredible Galaxy team. And of course, last year, Sporting Kansas City, I think he netted 15 goals. Or actually, I think it might have been 18 goals. And he's certainly going to be on his way to double-digit goals yet again this season if all things work out. And when you look at how bad Sporting Kansas City has been, the fact that he's able to be consistent, it gives you the impression that even if the pieces don't necessarily match right now because the Sounders are completely injured across the board, that he's still going to be able to do something and make something out of nothing. So from that standpoint, on the surface, the player is going to be a very good match for Brian Schmetzer, excuse me. I don't want to mispronounce our coach's name. But that being said, I don't think it even begins to scratch the surface of the problems that are surrounding this team. And I don't necessarily think a guy like Dejan Joveljic is going to automatically just come in and wave his magic wand and the Sounders are going to kick up the table, because there are a litany of problems. And unless there's a corresponding move to go along with this, whether that is, potentially moving off of Albert Rusnik to open up that spot, bring in another 10, which would certainly help, or if it's potentially just outright releasing a guy like Jordan Morris or Pedro de la Vega just to open up DP spots, I don't know. I kind of look at this move and think to myself, it's a panic buy, because Craig Waibel's job is definitely on the line here. And I don't know, man. If this is just a standalone move, to me, I feel like it's a desperation move of the last gasp of a GM that knows he's on his way out.
Yeah, I there's a couple of things about it. We're a week from the transfer window. We're past when we thought Morris was supposed to come back. This still with the transfer window means that somebody like Morris or De La Vega just kind of has to have a buy or whatever. We had the recent news, total speculation, guessing, the whole thing that hit the news about Jordan Morris selling his house here in Seattle over the last week or two. We started looking at these things, and there's still time and room. And obviously there's other things that have to come with it that didn't get all announced on a Sunday. But you're talking about a player who's been productive on bad teams which tells you two really important things about him as a player. One is that he can occasionally create for himself, and two,
Yep.
that he gets chances. He's pretty good at finishing what few chances he gets if it's on a bad team. And so if he's economical in those chances on a team that struggled and brings that kind of a strike rate into Seattle, that's a few more goals here and there. And that's when you're 3 points below the playoff line, that's enough to grab a point here and there. There's some real positives you can make about the player having some measurable impact, and you want your DP and your striker to do that. But when he goes into that spot, you don't bring him in to give him anything less than 90 minutes a match at this point, which means
Correct.
who's not going to play when they come back, which means who's going to be gone and off the roster.
Right. And I was hoping that it was going to be one of Pedro de la Vega or Jordan Morris. And for those that are tuning in that don't understand how it works, so as of right now, under the collective bargaining agreement, you can release up to 2 DPs per year, where all you have to do is negotiate a buyout, and then that's it. There's not going to be any reoccurring cap hits in the years following. So you don't necessarily have to work. You don't have to worry about that. But the interesting thing is that in this case, that wasn't the way that they opened up a DP spot. Essentially what they did, or what I guess the rumor is that Albert Rusnik is going to get extended by another 2 years as a way to buy down his contract. So essentially he's going from DP to, I guess you could say, a TAM level deal. Which opens up the roster spot for a guy like Dejan Joveljic. But that being said, it still doesn't necessarily address the problem that this roster is still, I guess you can say, behind the 8 ball, because again, Jordan Morris, Pedro de la Vega are out, and it looks like de la Vega is going to be out for the season. Jordan Morris, we have no idea, because they're not necessarily saying the Sounders aren't being transparent when it comes to his timetable. Paul Arriola is injured again. Jesus Ferreira got hurt. And then on the defensive side, Christian Roldan's still out with injury. Hassani Dotson's still out with an injury. And then, of course, now Jackson Reagan and Yaimar's been out with an injury. Jackson Reagan just got injured. And so, across the board, the gamble that Craig Waibel took by putting this team together, and I think, prior to us going on live, you're absolutely right. It's like when this roster was healthy, they were a competitive roster, and that's the gamble, because you like on paper, when everything is going right, yes, this team can stay competitive and can get to the playoffs, but that's the gamble, because if they get hurt, they're far older, so they're going to take a little bit longer to come back, and then that's the problem that Brian Schmetzer faces, because let's be perfectly honest, as of right now, when Dejan Joveljic comes into this roster, he's essentially playing with the Tacoma Defiance.
Yeah, and that is not untrue. I mean, I don't think. I mean, it's great that you get a chance to get your kids some games, and guys get their first goals here and there and stuff. But they're doing it because they're having to start these kids. Starting 2 19-year-olds against the Liga Mexicana side, type of thing. That is not what they were wanting to do in any of this. Yeah, in the same week in April, I went to a couple of matches, and they dropped 3 on Tigres and 4 on St. Louis in 5 days. Like, this is a team that, when it was healthy, is a very good team in MLS. But it's not been healthy for a while and doesn't seem to be getting healthy or staying healthy. And I do think the part of that desperation is that they are still just right on that line. Like, they're only like a couple points below with a game in hand. You win a match or 2 here, grab some points here and there. You're going to be in a cluster of teams that are fighting for those last 2 playoff spots. And once you get in, is the Western Conference that good? I mean, the top teams are good.
Sure.
Get in and have a little momentum because you won your way in. So you're kind of playing play-in football for the next 2 months. So you kind of have to get into a playoff elimination sort of mentality. And sometimes those teams can be dangerous. So you hope that's the supporter in me being really, really optimistic. But that's the whole goal, right? Is you still want your team to be trying to do stuff. The roster still has all sorts of questions around it. But if he steps in and we get a couple of goals in the next couple of weeks, the question of this signing goes away very, very quickly. Like
Well,
it becomes great move, Craig, right? But he's got to
that's
perform now. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's potentially a big if, right? Because
Yeah.
Craig Waibel doesn't exactly have the greatest track record when it comes to DP signings. He doesn't have the greatest track record when it comes to contract extensions. The interesting thing about this is that I guess he actually dodged a bullet here because of the injury to Jesus Ferreira. His DP escalator is now off the table, right? So
Right.
I guess you can say that he dodged a bullet on that one as well too. But that being said, if this fails to get the Sounders into the playoffs, yeah, I would probably assume that's pretty much going to be it. Because correct me if I'm wrong, right? The supporters have a say in this, don't they?
At some point, yeah, it depends on what time frame it is on it, right? Like it's every X amount of year, they vote. I don't know when the next vote is on that. Time becomes
I thought
just
it was this year.
mishmash. Is it this year? It's been a couple years, so yeah. I mean, Weibel's going to have to face season ticket holders, which is good. Hey, you want that. But also, I imagine Brian's been saying, because I think a week or two ago, Brian was like, well, we're not going to be able to sign a bunch of guys in this window. And you want to, and you can just hear the frustration.
Yeah,
You could just, it's like, I know everybody wants us to sign 5 players type of thing, but it's like, at least they're throwing him a bone, this is, I mean, that's not the greatest of analysis, but I mean, if you're Brian, you're happy with this move. I mean, what can you do in late August in MLS to sign players? Because you've been so bad at it for so long in the summer window that this is also a player he can plug and play. Like this is a guy, this is a guy he can just stick in the lineup, stay up top, become a target, and see if he can't get a couple of chances in those first couple of matches and put a couple away. He does that. That's a real morale boost for a team. But this only addresses part of the problem. They still need to sign. I think they need an enforcer defender. They don't have it. That's
the crux of the problem, because I think I've been very vocal. Like, if you're going to go and spend $6 million on a striker, you need a corresponding move with another attacker, roughly a center attacking mid that is going to be able to complement Joveljic. But that being said, you're absolutely right. When you look at the defensive back four, it's been decimated with injuries right now. You essentially have 2 teenagers playing in both of your center back spots because Yarmar can't stay healthy and Jackson Reagan just goes down. And now all of a sudden it's like you also potentially need a corresponding move for at least another center back, preferably a veteran center back if there is one.
Yeah, and historically the Sounders clubs of every era have done the best when they've had a big badass center forward.
Is this your token Chad Marshall?
This is my Chad Marshall
moment. Your Chad Marshall.
This is my always bring it out. But I mean, they need that. But also, they got to have somebody who can finish, right? And this is a guy who can finish when he doesn't get a lot of chances and productive. You start looking over his stats from like years with LA and years with Kansas City. His 18 goals in 32 matches last year. He had 15 goals in a season as a fairly primary starter with the Galaxy. He even had, a season where he was primarily a sub and he still dropped double-digit goals. This is a guy who does create and produce and finish.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, you don't have to worry as much about a guy whose style of play is just get him the damn ball. But somebody's got to be able to get him the damn ball.
Well,
who's going to get him the ball?
And this was absolutely needed because I think, I think it was last season where, Danny Musovski essentially came off the bench to have I think he had an 18, 19 goal season, which turned out to be a flash in the pan type of season. Don't get me wrong. It's nice when you have guys like Musovski having career years, but then, but at that stage, it turned out that, he's inconsistent. And then you have Ozazi De Rosario, who is clearly, in my estimation, not ready to be a consistent performer. And so you're essentially hitching your wagon to a dude like Paul Rothrock as a primary facilitator. And now with Dejan Joveljic into the fold, you actually can allow Paul Rothrock to be himself finally. And
You hope
stop
so.
asking him.
I
You
hope
can
so.
ask him to stop doing things that he's necessarily not capable of doing it. But that being said, like for me, I don't know what to make of this, because I think you're absolutely right. Like if Joveljic comes in and scores goals, okay, that's fantastic. It's certainly going to help. But that being said, this attack right now is nowhere near its high limit of where it needs to be. And again,
where it was earlier in the year, like this team could drop goals on teams. But a guy that creates for himself, frees up other players to be themselves, like you just said with Rothrock. If they can get him the ball where he becomes a problem, the teams have to focus on and keep an eye on. You start spreading out, opportunity. These things have ripple effects, right? And you have to hope that this is the sort of guy who can step in very quickly, have that kind of positive ripple effect. You're bringing in a veteran. He's 27 years old. He's won in the league. He's leaving a situation where he hasn't seen the victory side of anything much this year, because Kansas City's won like 4 games or some absurdly bad number. I mean, they're like
4 games.
4 games.
4 games.
I mean, it's August 23rd and they've won 4 games. Like that's got to have just been a please sell me sort of situation, and from what I've seen, Kansas City's just been dumping their roster. So, you have a guy who was happy to get out, probably happy to get out where he's at, on a team that's at least ambitious enough to still try and make the playoffs and make a run at it when they get there, with a coach that is very good in elimination games. And so it's a good move for him. Like, he's got to be viewing this as a winning sort of a move too, point of view of the player. He's coming into a situation where he's needed, and he's coming into a situation where he can be tangible to effect. But again, it's patching. It's not fixing, it's patching. They've got to get out from under a couple of bad contracts, and time will help them do that. But that's not time they've had. I mean, it's been a whole year since we've won a trophy, man. Seattle Sounders fans have never had to be patient because we've always been good. So it's like this stretch where they've been bad for months hasn't just been on accidents, because there's fundamentally problems with the roster in addition to the injuries. It's not just that they're hurt. It's that they have some fundamentally flawed roster construction. And that still points directly at the guy above Brian, which is Craig Waibel. So that goes. The roster construction is on your GM in every sport.
Every sport. And what's interesting about it is, on paper, it looks like it's not like, if all things were equal, we wouldn't be talking about roster construction, because they got their, they had their DP spread where you would expect them to be. Their TAM level signings are from the midfield all the way back into into their defense. And so like when you're looking at a starting 11 on paper, it's not just all in the attack. It's spread out actually kind of nice and evenly, where you're actually going to get some good players on your defensive back 4. You're going to get good players in your midfield. And so there was a lot of good balance. But that being said, the drawback to this is the fact that you look at this roster and it's old. I think I did the math a couple days ago. I think the average age of this roster is like 29 and a half. You have a lot of guys that are already in that 31 to 33. 31 to 33 age area across the board. And that's the gamble with this roster, Jeff, because here's the thing. Like, when it's healthy, you're absolutely right. It actually can do some damage and stay competitive, but that's the caveat. It has to stay healthy. And what Craig Waibel essentially has done is bet a hard 8 against some of these players that they weren't going to able to rebound. Like Jordan Morris is like the biggest one, where, he was initially signed to a TAM level deal, but there was a DP escalator that if he appeared in a certain amount of matches and scored a certain amount of goals, that his contract would be converted, to a DP contract. And of course, Jordan at that stage had only had 1 full healthy season in his career. And it turned out that he had his second that year. This was 2 years ago, where he happened to stay healthy for the majority of the season. He had a career year, and all of a sudden he's a DP. It's like, congratulations, you scored 15 goals, you set a career high, and then the very next year he gets injured 3 times in the season, is barely available. This year again, I think he's only been I don't think he's been available for 15 games at one stretch.
Not at a full stretch. And if you look at his stats for the season, we're talking about a guy who's only played in 11 matches and started 7. And that's been in a couple of stretches because he's been hurt in between, started, hurt, started, hurt. And you just hold your breath every time he takes off down the field at this point in time, because look, I love Jordan Morris. He scored the most goals in club's history. But being on a DP contract at this phase in his career is bad for the club.
Mm-hmm.
They rolled the dice assuming he wouldn't get there, probably.
Yeah, 100%. And it bit Waibel in the ass. And it's like, even like right when he got to 29-30, the DP days are over. DP
absolutely.
should be, as far as I'm concerned, even in today's modern Major League Soccer, DP should be, for players that are in that 25 to 29 age, age group, or if you have a wonder kid, then 22 to 29 or whatever the case may be. But they bring in Pedro de la Vega from Lanús in Argentina, and essentially in training for the season, he pulls a hamstring and he's out for half of the season.
He started hurt, basically.
Yeah, he started hurt. He was essentially damaged goods when we bought him. And since that point in time, he has not been able, to feature for more than, 7 minutes before he gets hurt again. And I don't mean to be glib about it. It's just like we have yet to see the high end performance. And then we have Albert Rusnik, who should have never been brought back on a DP contract. No other team in Major League Soccer would have given it to him. And if you allowed him to test the free agent market, and if there's another team that gives you a DP contract, fair enough. Enjoy the rest of your career. We're gonna go in a different direction. But that wasn't the case. And we have 3 DPs. Like, these are your DPs, Jeff. These are the guys that you lean on for goal production, right? That's why you bring them in, because they're supposed to be better than what you have available either on the roster or in the league. That's the reason why you have them.
Your DPs are your foundational players. They have to be. And if they're not producing at that level, then you failed in your roster construction. It's that simple. Like, that's the bar. If they're not producing and they're the ones eating up that resource and allocation and spot and cap space, whatever, this is the same in any situation like this. The cap space and the high-end contracts need to be your most productive players, period. You have players who pop up and then you reward them and they join that, right? Or whatever.
Correct.
But the reality is right now, the roster construction is set up to be too fragile in a league that is too unforgiving, with travel that is so much worse than everywhere else. And they couldn't handle it. That's why teams are breaking out. Plus, in the last 2 years, they've played too many games,
without a doubt.
And so you have guys playing too, and we're going to see this. We saw it in opening weekend in EPL. Just a couple of the teams that, they were so players just haven't had time off, and all of a sudden, Man U gets blasted by Hull, right? And not that anybody's feelings are hurt by that, but it's still like the way in which you have to manage players and rosters and stuff in an era of, so many games and so little time off and everything. Seattle hasn't been able to keep that team healthy and together. We've had stretches where you see where it works, like we've talked about. I mean, just think about how good they looked against Inter Miami last year, this time in that final. But when you have a fragile team and a GM that knows his job is on the line, we have a situation where they need to now finish out September and October so that they can maybe make a playoffs and play, and then be ready for whatever moves they need to make to get set up for the sprint. And then next summer, when everybody's now aligned with European football, can they put themselves in position to revamp a roster when some guys are gone, and retool and take advantage of this window of opportunity when maybe a lot of players are going to look at MLS differently because of the changing window and schedule dynamic. I think that the schedule change, and we've talked about this on the show before, the schedule change, calendar flip, is biggest effect will potentially be on its international transfer window.
Without a doubt.
And
well, and then also the proposed roster changes where the salary cap is going up, right?
Yeah.
So I've heard it anywhere between 25 and 30 million, a 25 to 30 million cap with overall wage expenditures topping out over 100 million, essentially on average per team. Now, not every team is going to spend. I understand that.
No.
But then when you also look at the calendar flip, and it's going to make it easier for teams to dip into Europe now. And so from that standpoint, yeah, like if the money expands and it's easier for players to come back and forth without having without having the off season in your secondary window in Europe, yeah, I would probably assume it's going to be a little bit easier for a team like the Sounders to rebuild or revamp or whatever adjective you want to use to describe it. But I did want to ask you this question because I'm curious to know what your opinion is. What do you think the relationship is between Brian Schmetzer and Craig Waibel?
I think that Brian is pretty practical in general. He's a pretty pragmatic guy. And I think that from that standpoint, I think Brian is always, as long as Weibel's being transparent with him, it's probably okay. But the club has not been transparent enough publicly in a lot of this stuff lately for me to have that good a feeling. I can't imagine it's not been a little strained.
I would agree with that.
It's got to be strained right now. Now, part of why Weibel's hands have been tied is because of choices he's made.
Correct.
Correct. I have a friend that I text with all the time, and he's like, "Are they going to do anything?" I'm like, "Well, you can't expect the same people to make different decisions very often." Lo and behold, they finally did. And so I can't imagine that there's not some frustration and strain there. Like, there's got to be some butting of heads. Brian needed more warm bodies that were older than 19. Like, at this point. Now, here's the thing: when you roster construct together, you want your pipeline of young players, you want your domestic transfers that you make, and you want to be attractive to international players that want to come into the league, right? Those are your methods for creating a roster. The being attractive for teams and players from overseas has never been that much of a problem for Seattle conceptually, because they come into Lumen Field, it's loud. They come in, other players have spoken well of it. That can't help but be a good thing down the road for Seattle with that. But I imagine Brian's frustrated in general. Like, it's got to have some strain. There's got to be some strain there. I don't know that's Brian's way to be too. He's very matter of fact about everything, and you'd pick up some sort of hints. I think the biggest thing that kind of gives me a sense there's got to be some strain was him commenting about the transfer window at all is unusual. And so when he mentioned and talked about the whole, well, we're not going to sign 5 players this transfer window, it tells you, one, he's hearing fans, and 2, he's a little frustrated with the process right now. I think it's reasonable to read into that, and that means the guy in the office next door and him have got to be a little butting heads. But he's now given him a healthy, prime in his career, productive striker.
And hopefully he doesn't. And hopefully he doesn't break down
right away.
Let's knock on wood here that he doesn't break down within the first 2 weeks. But
right,
I like your description of Brian is accurate, right? Because he really is kind of like that ruthless pragmatist, where it's like it's like he understands exactly what this franchise is capable of because he's been around it forever, right? There's no, you can't sugarcoat it, right? So bullshit walks with Brian Schmetzer, right? Like you can't you can't bullshit somebody that knows that you're a complete bullshitter, right? So it's
Well,
like,
I mean, he's even told stories about Alan Hinton reading the riot act at 18. Like,
yeah,
he took it as a kid himself, and that's, almost 50 years ago as a player, coming in. But also,
yeah, he
the
was
Pochettino just resigned with the U.S. national team. Brian's not going anywhere.
right. That's exactly right.
Like, the
And
notion that he
the
might be gone in a year because the national team job was open might have been a different thing. Now
might
it's
have been a different thing.
like this team can't be going into a rebuild with him in his late 60s. He's not going to
Yeah,
go
but
do that.
there's a right way and there's a right way and a wrong way to rebuild that you're
Correct.
going to give Brian Schmetzer an opportunity to win MLS Cup within the next 3 years, right? Before he finally calls it good. But the thing about this is he was around when Joe Roth was the majority owner, and the transfer and the MLS calendar wasn't an issue because we were still able to bring in an Obafemi Martins, and we were able to bring in a Kelvin Leerdam, and we were able to bring in
Gustav Svensson.
Thank you. My favorite Swedish chef, Gustav Svensson, right? So, and they were able to bring Clint Dempsey back. Eddie Johnson came back, right? So it's like, here's the thing. It's like ambition is very linear. Either you have it and you're going to do it, or you're not. And the interesting thing about this is even when Adrian Hanauer was the GM under Joe Roth, things were getting done because Joe Roth said, you're going to go get these things done. And then when, what's his ass, the next GM, when Hanauer moved up.
Hanauer worked with Chris Henderson, then it was Lagerwey, and then...
Yeah, Lagerwey. There you go. It was Garth Lagerwey. And even Garth Lagerwey was still able to improve this team. Mm-hmm. And it was only under when Craig Waibel ended up getting this job that the Sounders do absolutely nothing for 3 summer transfer windows. Yep. Like, I only thought Spurs were capable of going an entire transfer window without doing anything. I really thought they were the only club capable of doing absolutely nothing under Daniel Levy. I was wrong. My hometown Seattle Sounders, my hometown Seattle Sounders did it for 3 consecutive summers while doing very minimal upgrades in their offseason. And like this one was a tough year because we ended up selling our best midfielder in Obed Vargas. Now, he eventually was going to go anyway, but the idea of his replacement being a guy like Hassani Dotson, who is essentially the epitome of what an MLS journeyman actually is, to replace him. And then the corresponding moves after that were essentially trading our best high-end young pieces for general allocation money. Like we made a lot of trades involving our depth pieces that got a lot of minutes under Brian Schmetzer the last couple of years. Reed Baker-Whiting goes to Nashville. Georgie Monongo goes. And it's like you wonder like if we still had Reed Baker-Whiting and Georgie Monongo. You know what I mean? Like, granted, they never, like, those kids weren't necessarily lighting the world on fire, but they were productive.
And they're predictable. What I mean? We knew what we had with them.
That's exactly right.
We know what we had with them. I still think that this club to get to that next level needs a change in its decision making on the roster side.
Is that a nice way of saying that you approve the sacking of a guy like Craig Waibel? Without being mean about it.
Without being mean, the reality is, have we hit his ceiling as a GM?
Yeah. 100%.
And they won the League's Cup, and then his decision making process was just to keep the band together too long. And so when faced with that situation, I don't know that that he's going to fix what he's broken.
I don't think he's capable because right. in order to fix the problem, you actually have to admit there is a problem. Right. And that's that's the interesting thing, because there's a reason why we haven't been able to be active in a summer transfer window, because we've been up against the cap every single year for the last 3 years. There really hasn't been a lot of cap flexibility, and a lot of it has to do with the decision making of extending certain players instead of doing the thing that he absolutely should have done, which is, and again, I always go back to this, and I understand the reason why they didn't, because they were coming out of COVID, and you have to be able to appease to your supporters. I understand that, right? But after the 2022 World Cup, where Christian Roldan and Jordan Morris were at their peak value because they were on the World Cup roster, those are the type of decisions where, yes, fans are not going to like it, but you're coming off your CONCACAF Champions League victory. That core has run its course. I mean, for the large part, that core has been around since 2016. They were around for the 4 MLS Cup finals, winning 2, and then of course they won. They ended up winning the CONCACAF Champions League. Like, that was the time for a full reset, where you move on from certain players that have like the most value that you possibly can, and then you try to get younger at those positions, and you build a new core, and now you're set for the next 5 to 10 years. But that didn't happen. They were extended, and then they were extended some more. It's funny. It's funny because I actually thought that Raul Ruiz probably would have stayed, and then João Paulo, thank you very much, was probably going to get extended, because that's usually like the MO, right? If they're a fan favorite, they're going to stick around a little longer. Except, at least they had the tenacity to say, okay, cool, you guys have hit the end of your road. But the double downing on players, where you're kind of looking at their age and you're kind of looking at their ability to get injured, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, like, if you sign these players and they continue to get hurt, good luck getting off their contract, because now they have absolutely zero value in the open market. Like, you're not going to be able to do it without taking cap hits.
And then you just lose them to free transfers and stuff like that. The biggest thing is, and this is something that happens in some clubs compared to others, is that some teams are resistant to change because it's generally working and they just don't want to lose what they have. And they start being a little too cautious. They keep teams together too long. They stick with players longer than they should. And that sentimentality can be good, but also in as far as like creating a culture, you're one of us type of thing. But the reality is, you have to be able to turn over a roster faster than people sometimes think you need to, while giving the impression of continuity. They have the continuity in the coaching, they have the continuity in the management, they have continuity of these different places, but you still kind of want to have a rotation of players in and out of a roster, one, so that players look to you. I mean, if you're not making changes and stuff, they're not looking at you as a place to go,
right?
Because you've not been available to them in different windows. And then, of course, the last couple of years, the transfer windows have been wonky to begin with because of the Club World Cup and World Cup year. And they have, but everybody's facing that same challenge, and they haven't managed that challenge well themselves. That's not an excuse. It's pointing out that's something everybody had to deal with. So when the transfer windows were at different times, everybody else had to deal with all that crap too, right? But you start looking at, and I looked at, and I recently saw an interview with Kevin De Bruyne, where he didn't want to leave Manchester City, but the club had decided they were moving on, and this is like a foundational player of their success. And it was just one of those things where it was just like the club was like, yeah, just no, we like you, we think you maybe still have some in the tank, but we can't give you that kind of contract. Enjoy Naples. And so
correct,
right? So the willingness to do that. There was a really interesting look in Soccernomics at when Olympique Lyon had a run where they won like 7 straight French league titles, and their roster was 21 to 28, like 90% in this age range, and they just rotated player, like people, if they had value and people wanted them, bam, they'd sell them and bring in the next player, and they kept the continuity through the management and the coaching and approach, and won. And I think that soccer is better at that than some sports, at managing that kind of rotating player core. And some teams do it better than others, some GMs. I feel like the Roth era handled a lot of that better than this era has.
I would agree. Well, and here's the interesting thing, though, about Adrian Hanauer, and I will give him credit. Like, when he was GM, he always gave himself wiggle room. He always gave himself flexibility with the roster, right?
Yes.
Because
yes.
Joe Roth was your ultimate showman, right? He's Mr. Hollywood, right? He likes to entertain. He wanted to give this gift to Seattle, and I always appreciated him for that. But I give credit to Adrian Hanauer because he always gave himself cap flexibility, so he was able to do it without necessarily getting rid of 2 or 3 pieces, to cut off his nose and spite his face in order to facilitate these type of deals. And so from that standpoint, like I always gave Hanauer credit for it. That being said, I know a lot of longtime Sounder fans, including my brother and myself. I think a lot of people give credit to Chris Henderson and his staff.
Henderson was a huge part of that, but also Adrian had managed the constantly rotating roster of the USL team from like 02 to 08, where they won like a couple of championships too with him and Brian in partnership. So he took that. He suddenly had Roth's money, and then he also had a veteran player who was a good scout. Chris Henderson was good in that role. He got us Freddie Montero and things like that. Yep. So I do think that that's the case, but it's one of those things where it's like they've won something with Craig. Give him a really nice watch, and let's get the next guy.
Yeah, and I would say like I wouldn't wait to the end of the season to do it. And don't get me wrong. Like I know we're getting a little off topic because we should we'll probably finish up talking about Joveljic and exactly the impact that we feel like he's going to have. But I will say this when it comes to Craig Waibel, that Adrian Hanauer shouldn't wait until the end of the season to do this. Like now would be the good time to do it, right after the window closes. That would be the time to do it because you give yourself a couple months to actually do a thorough search for your next GM. If it's going to be a young up and coming GM, or if it's going to be a veteran GM that has a good CV of rebuilding teams around this league, or even in leagues abroad, you give yourself enough time to find the right guy, get him in place for the sprint. And if you want to make roster moves in the offseason to get off some of these contracts, it is what the sprint's only going to be what it is. It's essentially like a bubble season before you actually get to your first proper off season heading into the 2027-2028 season, where you're going to have enough time to go ahead and bring in the necessary pieces that you feel like you're going to be able to compete for that season. Me personally, I feel like now would be the absolute perfect time to do it, because you're not gonna be rushed to try to get that dude in a short window in the off season and miss your opportunity to potentially make some moves ahead of your first off season.
Also, it'd give Waibel an off ramp. He makes this big move, and then he sets himself up to go look for the next job. You could do this without it being
right.
Yeah, and Adrian's not someone who tends to fire people, so they're going to be who they are. He's going to be who he is, right? But you also set Waibel up. You also have a situation where the GM can't do anything, so you have time because there's no transfer window for a while. But I worry that this move buys Waibel the spring.
Right. The interesting thing is, that's what I felt last year's Mickey Mouse Invitational win. That's what I call the Leagues Cup, the Mickey Mouse Invitational, because that's essentially what it is. It's a Mickey Mouse tournament. But that win against Miami, I think what it did was give fans a false sense of hope that this roster still had the tenacity to compete long term. And I also think it gave Craig Waibel more time because let's be honest, a trophy is a trophy, right? And so from that standpoint, regardless, it's not the right trophy, but I mean, it's a trophy. And I think really what it did was, I think in a lot of ways, potentially inflated his ego a little bit. And I also think that maybe in his mind, he feels like he's validated for these moves. And I think that also
problems.
It masks problems.
Mask problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I think what you just said also is a part of this as well too, where all of a sudden you're able to land a dude like Joveljic, and now all of a sudden it's like if they're able to rebound and make the playoffs, then Waibel's going to be in this position again for another full calendar year.
Yeah, I do think I think that there's no way of talking about this edition of Joveljic without talking about Waibel's job security. I think the two are.
I would agree.
I think Waibel's future is married to the success of this signing.
Yeah.
And I'm optimistic. I think it's a good signing.
I do too.
I mean, here's the thing. A lot of the complaints will be all he does is score and all these sorts of things. Well, yeah, that's good. Thank
Good.
you.
He's a
Yeah,
striker.
he's a striker. I always love that. It's like, well, he scores a goal every other game. That means he's going to get at least 17 goals a year.
Yeah.
That's useful.
Good. That's useful.
That's useful from your striker position, right? Yeah, you got to have that guy. I think it was something like in his first 52 matches in Kansas City, he scored 26 goals. Like that's a pretty good.
That's a good return
on a team that's not been very good.
Yeah, it's a great return.
It's a great return. So yeah, all he does is score. Good. Put him out there. What number does he want? You know, I'm a big fan of all he does is score. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's like complaining that your central defender only defends. Like all he does is block shots. You know,
yeah, like I don't need my striker to track back and defend.
No,
it's not a central part of the game that I'm too worried about. I guess my worry is it's even if Joveljic comes in and has an impact, but it's still not enough to get this team over the line.
I think that they can get over the line. Actually, they're going to start getting a few guys back. Alex O'Donnell is playing more again. They're only 3 points below with a game in hand. The teams that they're in the cluster with, that's just a handful of points around them right now. You look at the Galaxy, San Diego, Minnesota, Portland, Salt Lake, Colorado. Like there's like 5 teams within 3 points of them. Like they're going to pass a couple of those teams and move in.
I would assume,
because I think that they've bottomed. I feel like they've bottomed. I know we talked before the show about the draw last night, but that was the sort of point that a team doesn't get if they've stopped. Right, 84th minute equalizer. Grind out some stoppage time to still grab that point on the road. That is the sort of professionalism a team that is still with it conceptually, that's they play out the string and lose 1-0 or give up the second goal in the 87th minute sort of thing if you haven't. So I do think that there's room for that. I do think that there's still a cultural desire to win and at least make the playoffs. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but we still haven't addressed the fundamental issues of roster construction on this. MLS is going to be different for the next 2-3 years in this transitional period. And as MLS continues to go through waves, what it was in 2009, what it was in 2014, what it was post-COVID, what it is now, as the league has expanded and new ownership groups have come in and more resources and money and salary caps and things have happened, you have to adjust to each ebb and flow of each era of it. And we are entering a next era, like you talked about, like the salary caps going up, we're going to have the transfer window. And is the guy in charge right now of roster building the guy you want roster building into this next transitional era or not? I don't think he's the guy. That is the only question Adrian Hanauer needs to answer right now about that. And is the answer that the supporters group, when they vote on the GM, like yay or nay, vote of confidence or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. I know there's an exact term for it. And somebody
that sounds about right. Yeah.
The bottom line is, as we enter this next phase, and it is a next phase of MLS that's happening. It's a new commissioner, new salary cap structure, new calendar and roster and transfer window. This will change. Inter Miami has changed the game. The East Coast teams like NYC building a new stadium, that's going to change the game. There's going to be some ambitious teams that are going to get ahead of you, and you're going to play catch up forever if you don't keep up. Keeping up is a lot better than catching up.
I think that's already happened because the Sounders, for whether fans want to believe this or not, from their inception in Major League Soccer until about 2020, the Sounders were probably considered one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league when it came to when it came to fan support, when it came to stadium atmosphere, when it came to ambition, the Sounders were constantly always in a position where they were upgrading every single summer. They were always pushing for Supporter Shield. They were always pushing for MLS Cup. Now, granted, unfortunately, they weren't able to do it under Siggy Schmid. God rest his soul. But, once 2016 happened, the right buttons were pushed, and all of a sudden we were able to get over that hump and get into MLS Cup. We won a couple of them. And it culminated into CONCACAF Champions League, and that was absolutely fantastic. And you're absolutely right. I think the issue with this is that I think there have been plenty of teams that have already lapped Seattle. And
because that's the ambition index idea.
And the interesting thing is, I think it's true that Adrian Hanauer and his board of investors are looking to secure funding for a stadium so they can improve their revenue streams. Okay, that's great. That's ambition, maybe not in the way that fans want to see ambition, but like fans equate ambition to
transfer fees, though. So.
That's exactly right. Like you can't have one without the other, right? And so they want a long-term. You can't exactly right. So fans want to see players come through the door, but unfortunately, since that CONCACAF Champions League, Seattle has not been that same prototype team. It's what's funny. They're not leading the league anymore in that type of context, but they're also not willing to keep up with the Joneses either. It seems like the Sounders have been one of those type of teams that has a budget every year, and they're going to stick to their budget, and it just is what it is.
And in general,
I'm okay with it. Yeah,
but also they have a slightly burned out fan base right now. I mean,
without a doubt.
Like there's been so many games, and that seems like a good champagne problem, but it's really not. You have a fan base that has watched PSG and Atletico Madrid play your team, and you gave them a game. And you've taken Mexican teams on and these sorts of things. You've beaten Messi, but right now, going into the next several years, is you got to sell people on the league,
right?
Because that's what's going to be here for the foreseeable future is just the league, and so you've got to sell people on the league, and you have a fan base that's a little tired. I have some friends, they're season ticket holders and stuff, and there's I have so many tickets to, there's just been so many games. But in the end, good signing, probably.
Yeah, good signing.
Is it all they need? No.
Does
it address all of their problems?
No, not even close.
Does it possibly patch and keep a guy in that maybe we think should move on? Unfortunately, yes. Is he the guy that we need long term? Probably not.
Well, I will say that in a best case scenario, like when you're going out to get a guy like Dejan Joveljic, that is usually like the final piece to a puzzle in in an MLS Cup run, right? Like you feel like you have a team that's capable of winning MLS Cup, so you want to hedge your bets. You go out there and pick up Joveljic because you want that dude that all he does is score. You know what I mean? Okay, great, but at the end of the day, let's just say that right now he's sitting on 8 goals, and for the rest of the season, maybe he gets 7 and reaches that 15 goal mark. That would be absolutely fantastic. And the Sounders squeak into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They're not really, like me personally, like the way that this roster currently sits, we have a lot of long-term injuries. We may get a piece or two back for a playoff run, but in no way, shape, or form is this team capable of getting to the MLS Cup final.
No, the number of weird things that would have to happen in their favor is just unbelievable.
Well, and we saw it last year.
Yeah,
we saw it last year when this roster was healthy in the playoffs, and they couldn't get past the first round.
There's 14 matches left. 7 goals would be at the clip he's generally kept.
Yeah,
7 goals from their striker position would be better than the production they've been getting. A goal every other match,
which is 0 at this stage.
Which is 0 at this stage, right? I mean, all right. So imagine their striker position was doing that all season. Would they have more than the points they have? They'd have at least a few more points. Maybe give them 4 or 5 more points because they pick up a draw here or whatever. That is a difference making thing.
I would agree.
And so, goals are the point. So if this gets some goals and they get some points and they make the playoffs, that is the bar of which this contract should be judged on its base level. Then it becomes, what does he mean to the future of it? Because they're investing a lot into it, and what are they going to get around him? At that point now, this is a guy you've said you're going to build around. So he comes in to fill a spot. What do you do then to feed him the ball so he can have that 18-20 goal season, which at 27 to 31, you have him for the next 3-4 years. He's got a couple of them in him. He's also been healthy. He's been durable.
Yep. And he's been, and you're absolutely right. He's
been healthy and durable in MLS travel.
Yep.
This is healthy and durable in MLS.
He's smack right in the middle of his prime. You're absolutely right. Like, that is probably the next step in his career is potentially getting to that 20 goal mark and potentially putting himself into the Golden Boot race.
Yeah. And then you need to make sure that you have service from your midfield and wings that targets a target striker so that you take advantage of it. And that's the next part of it. But on balance, on its own, good signing.
Good signing.
I don't think that they've overspent. They've surprisingly spent. I mean, $6 million for a transfer fee in 2026 is not that big a. I think I saw coming. It's like 13 million when one of the teams is doing. But
like if this was 2016, $6 million is a big transfer fee.
Well, I mean, what was Deuce's 5 in 2013, 2014?
Yeah, something like
that. And
that
was so young. You start doing the math up, So here's the thing: the supporter in me wants to be hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
The media in me is still frustrated at the lack of transparency in all of this.
I would agree.
And we've talked about, the rules and stuff. And even though there's a lot of rules as written, it doesn't always seem like the league follows them. And we never quite understand some of the moves that they do because of the utter lack of transparency. So we have to maybe hope that the new commissioner is a little more transparent, but he's one of their own. So I don't think that's going to happen. Well, I mean, they didn't hire a guy from their own pool of people to out them.
Right. Correct. Correct.
So that's not going to happen. But I do want to see Adrian get in front of the microphone and tell us why he thinks this move makes the team better and is better for the club and better for supporters and things, because ultimately your fan base expects that now. Your fan base is too mature. It's too knowledgeable of things. It sees through BS too easily. The reason attendance is dwindled is because the fans have been seeing through it. That's it. But it's too big. It's shocking. Like, I genuinely didn't think they would make any sort of a move in the next couple transfer. I was like, nope, they're just going to write out these contracts, and if they hire a guy, that guy will hire it. Like, kind of write out some of it because.
Yeah, I think they're still going to do. I think they're still going to do that, right? I mean, both things can be true at the same time. Yeah, both things can be true at the same time. I mean, you can bring in this contract, and you can potentially lay the foundation while still trying to get off some of these contracts or letting some of these contracts expire. My biggest fear, I think, is that if Joveljic does come with a playoff spot this year, that will be an excuse for Craig Waibel to stay on.
Oh, absolutely. That's totally my concern.
Yeah, that is 100% my concern, because, that's the thing. It's like it would be too easy for Adrian Hanauer to be like, well, that move did correspond with the play. It's like, yeah, but that can't be your ultimate ambition, just making the playoffs and going out in the play-in or in the first round. You know what I mean? Like, that can't necessarily be your ambition, because without it, you never would have sniffed the playoffs to begin with anyways, right? So
you got to look at the way in which Beckham with Miami, what NYC is doing, and kind of LA and some of these teams. You look at the ambition of a Nashville and an Austin and some of those cities you wouldn't think of as being ambitious definitely are. Those ownership groups, they're having differentiating levels of success with it, but it ain't for lack of effort or want. Like they want to do that, and you have to stay in that group of more ambitious teams to keep up with them. to keep up with them. And I worry if they're so distracted about the stadium, and the stadium situation has to be resolved, because we do
Without a doubt.
have a new ownership situation with the Seahawks. We do have a contract with the building expiring in 5 years. You have a window of time where you want to have a building ready just in case, because of those sorts of things. All of those are real things.
Yep.
And in the grand scheme of things, those big picture 5-year things have to be addressed now to a certain extent for those things to happen. But you can't lose track of the short term as well. But making the playoffs will be good for the fan base. I mean, you're not going to have playoff baseball here in Seattle this year. You're not to compete with. You're coming on the heels of a Super Bowl team. There's a lot to look forward to. The Sonics are coming back, and all those announcements are trickling in. It's a competitive landscape here for fan attention.
Yeah, I would agree.
And that should raise the bar a little bit. I would hope. But all those things are definitely happening. And you want to do it, because it very quickly could just be NFL season if this doesn't work out. That's going to be all of the focus, especially coming off like the Super Bowl. Yeah, that's a distraction. So you got a team that could be very much ignored in October if it's not working.
Yeah, and that is as far as I'm concerned, that would be worst case scenario.
It's terrible
for the Sounders, because you're going to have your diehard Sounders fans that will continue to show up, their season ticket holders, but it is the casual fans that do show up, that look at it, because the reason why they show up from time and time again is because they know they're actually going to see a competitive product. Typically, the Sounders historically have always been a competitive team, and that has been the antithesis of a team like the Mariners, who really aren't a ambitious club at all. Not at all, right? But that being said, that's the reason why the Sounders have always had very good attendance figures, is because they had always been that team that is willing to do something that is completely not Seattle, which is spend money. When it comes to professional franchises, like they were the outlier there for
years. Yeah, them and the Seahawks are the ones that spend money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Paul Allen was never cheap. But the Allens don't own the Seahawks anymore. Yeah. So that changes the relationship between the Sounders and the Seahawks. And long-term viability of Lumen Field as a place to play is a valid question, and those are multi-year problems that have to be addressed.
Also, but if the Sounders, by the way, the Sounders are affected too, because Paul Allen had a minority stake in the Sounders as well too. And his shares are currently up for, as far as last time I read, they were currently up for sale. I think he owned 25%.
Yeah, it's like 20-25%. That's the number that rings a bell with me too. And so the Allens, and the Allens have had to sell the Trailblazers and the Seahawks and all this, because of that. And that's a factor, right? Under-due management changes things. But maybe you have an opportunity. There's a lot of people that are trying to buy into sports. By the way, and there's a window of opportunity maybe to get some people who are ambitious to come in and buy that 25% and light a fire under the club. That'd be a welcome.
Do you have, by the way, just out of curiosity, do you have the 25% money? I mean, I can go halves on it. I can go halvesies with you.
With a little bit of help in financing, I could definitely put 0.1% down. And not a very big 0.1%. Well, here's the thing, and that's 25% in an era where the franchise is valued getting close to $1 billion. Like they're in the 700-800 million range in the last valuations that I saw. You start putting a stadium into the valuation of the club and stuff like that. They got to have some people that really want to invest in sport. And there are people that are doing that. We're seeing that a lot now. The people are wanting to we're seeing athletes buy in to that. I'd love to see some of that come in, because then that can underwrite some of the stadium stuff to free up money for the.
I would like to think that Hanauer would like to have maybe somebody that is already a part of a multi-club ownership that has deep pockets that can help facilitate the stadium financing. You would think that would be something that he would probably want, but again, it's up to the Allen Foundation to.
I would love to see the new Seahawks owners just be a part of that. They seem to be pretty ambitious. So I wouldn't be opposed to that either, because that buys you leeway in the time with the stadium and that relationship. So, but those are conversations for another time. So yeah,
absolutely. And I will talk to you off camera about the new Seahawks owner. Apparently he's I'm not going to talk about him on here, but anyway, that is going to do it for us. And I hope this was a good conversation for you guys tonight as well too. Please do me a favor and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Also hit the notification bell. And Jeff, as we depart from this good conversation, is there any last things that you would like to share?
I think that this will need to be good in a hurry. Like, he's got to score a couple goals in his first couple games. Like there's a lot of pressure on him right now. That's going to come with it too. Like, he's got to show up for work and be productive for this to buy some support from fans on it, or it's just going to be considered more of the same and be just written off very quickly.
Yeah, and I think that Craig Waibel, his reputation with the supporters is hanging by a thread. And I think that for the most part, yes, there are going to be some fans that think he's doing a good job. I think the majority have seen right through it and understand that, the ambition just isn't necessarily there with this guy. And so I think he had to do something. And I think from this move, yes, there probably was a little bit of desperation in it. But that being said, my biggest fear is that this leads to a playoff spot that gives him an extra year when really he should have been out the door to begin with anyways. But what I will say on its own, Joveljic is a very good signing. Like, I can't stress that enough. This is this is up there with bringing in Clint Dempsey. This is up there with bringing in an Obafemi Martins, because it's been a long time since Seattle has actually had a pure goal scorer up top for this team. It's been an awful long time.
In his prime.
I think maybe you could probably say the last one was Raul Ruidiaz.
And Raul had some seasons, man.
Yeah. So I mean, on its own, it's a very good move. But I mean, the correct thing to do is having a corresponding move to go along with it. So if you do happen to get the playoffs, at least you actually give yourself a shot attacking wise to potentially advance in those playoffs. But with the roster being essentially decimated, without any transparency about some of these injuries, and what the timetable is for some of these injuries, who knows exactly how this thing is going to play out. But that being said, I welcome Dejan Joveljic. I think you're going to like the Pacific Northwest, and I think this is going to be a spot where I think you're going to enjoy the remaining years of your prime, because Seattle. Once players come to Seattle, they realize that this is a good place to, it's a good place.
He's played here on the other side, so he's played here a bunch of times. So he's he knows what he's coming into. So that's a good thing. But it's got to work out fast for it to. Yep. It's got to work out fast.
He's got to hit the ground running. Yeah. I agree. Yep. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Jeff, I want to say thank you for coming in on short notice, man. I actually enjoy these conversations every single time you come on.
It's fun being a friend of the show, because we do just kind of go off on tangents.
Yeah, we do. God damn it! Give me a grandson. Just play.
Yeah, the granddaughter thing is the most amazing thing in the world. Yeah. So it's like, congratulations, my son Jacob and daughter-in-law Ketsia on baby Miranda.
Congratulations! All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. More importantly, I hope you have a great start to your work week, and I hope it goes smoothly, so we can all reconvene on this channel next week as Spurs try to get their ship righted against Newcastle United. A kid can dream. All right, take care, guys.